esteemed viewers, welcome to another episode of the program Disability Voice from Advent Cable Network, Nigeria. I am Favour Ajara, your host. Disability Voice program is created to educate the general public on the issues surrounding persons with disability. As we all know, persons with disability are also human. They have their rights just like every other person in the society, so they should not be denied of their right. This program will serve a purpose to educate and to enlighten everyone, both in the church settings, the general public, and the government, that persons with disability can become who they want to if given opportunity in the society. Today, on today's episode, we are going to be looking at the models of disabilities. And here in the studio with me is a guest, Mr. Bertrand Emeka. And Mr. Bertrand Emeka is the Executive Director of PediaNet. He is also the Human Rights and Disability Advocate. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Going straight away to the topic, the models of disability. Mr. Emeka, please, I want you to explain to our viewers, to tell us what you understand by the models of disability.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think I must begin by first of all thanking the organizers of this program. I believe it's historic. It's an intervention to the state of people with disability in this country that make up the population, people with disability population of about 35 million. And then when you have a structure like this, an organization like this, putting its processes together to build the lives of people with disability and integrate us back to life, to society, we must commend them. So we must commend you. And it's important for us to understand too that we needed to have a model on disability because of the fact that disability is becoming a developmental issue. All across the world, we have seen the world policymakers, the women scholars appreciating the fact that of the 7.6 billion people on the planet, 10% of these people are people living with disabilities. And 80% of these are living in Africa, in the developing world, third world countries to be precise. So we needed to stimulate a model as a tool for defining impairment and of course ultimately providing basis upon which government and society can intervene, on the issues of disability. It's just a tool, it's a strategy being put in place, policies, legislation, programming to intervene in the lives of people living with disabilities to make their life more meaningful and so as to enable them live independently outside charity and other models that are not desirous of self-actualization of their aspirations.
Thank you very much for that explanation. Okay, please, can you list the models of disability for us to know? Because the viewers will want to know the types of, that's the models type, so that at least we know the one to follow and the ones not to follow. So can you please tell us the...
we know we have the medical model. It is also known as biomedical. We have the charity, we have the development and human rights, and we have the social model. But there are other models like the expert and professional models, and of course the religious and moral rights model, the economic model, customer model. We're going to be concentrating on the four. And of course, when you talk about these models, you look at the models from the perspective of medical model. Medical models are the ones that looks at people with disability and sees them as people that should be kept under subjugation. They see them as people that are limited. They have physical and mental limitations, and they are connected to social and geographical environment. They tend to see people with disability as people that needs to be fixed, and if possibly not fit for human interactions and what have you. And so what they do, they see people with disability as a source of the problem, and of course they also believe that solutions can be found by focusing on people with disabilities. And when you look at social model goes beyond people with disability being the source of the problem or being seen as people that should be fit. It sees the environment as what should be fixed. When you have a wheelchair user trying to access an environment that is not disability friendly or that environment is not inclusive, that environment needs to be made more friendly by putting in place ramps, or if it's a story building, you need to create a lift, or an elevator to take the person up there. So those kind of things are things. So you look at someone that is a blind person, he needs a personal assistant. Some of our brothers who are, like I came in on a crutch, I need a crutch to move from point A to B. So the social model believes that those environments and social conditions are the things that should be fixed and not the person with disability. And then, of course, when you look at the issue of the charity model is another thing that a lot of people, most countries in developing countries, because of their non-access to maybe resources, or they lack political will, they seem to look at the charity model as a means of assessing and intervening in the rights of people with disability. They look at people with disability from the perspective of the fact that they should be seen as charities. Supports, assistance should be given to them to cause applause for government and governmental institutions. And most times you see in most countries, like even Nigeria, you go to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, they only wait till December 3rd, which is the UN Day, International Day for People with Disability, where programs are rolled out, drums are beating, you organize a whole show to talk about people with disability. But after that program, nobody's talking about inclusive education, nobody's talking about how to make public building accessible, transport system accessible, and healthcare system accessible. So the charity model believes that we should be left under charity perspective and all the rest of them. Of course, the expert who believes that we are the experts, we are the passive clients, while the experts are the ones that know about us, and we don't have any say. We don't have any say. They are the ones that know what we need. You go to the hospital, the doctors is the one telling you what he needs to do for you without listening to you. Listening to you and knowing what are your experiences. He needs to learn from your experiences, know what you're going through, and of course carry out a comparative analysis of your experiences and other experiences across the world if he's into research base, to know that we have gone beyond the time and season where we are left in institutions, to appreciate the fact that we also have a role to play. There's a period of self-determination. The issue of human rights and development should be taken into consideration, because disability is a cross-cutting issue now. It's found in health, it's found in education, it's found in water, and it's found in public health sector, housing, and everything. Disability cuts across. You can't talk about building a road without talking about people with disability. But ultimately, in the long run, people become, when the road is not well done, it's not well laid out, people will become challenged through road accidents, and then they find it impossible to pass the road. So you have to create alternative ways of movement for people with disability, and create a transport system that is also accessible for even with visual blind people, and of course the use of braille and other tools, so that people with disability can also move with mobility aids, wheelchairs and crutches without allowing themselves to be subjugated to the wills and caprices of the other people who see themselves as ableism. They are able, they are not disabled. So they can do anything they want to do to us.
Thank you very much for that enlightenment. I also want you to throw a little enlightenment on, you mentioned human rights.
Yes.
The human rights model.
Yeah.
Please, can you explain
yes.
about that?
The human rights model, as we talk about, deals with the fact that disability is the discourse. We are looking at all humans are born equal. And of course, because they are born equal, they have the same rights. Nobody is superior to another. You see, as we have tall, short, black, and Caucasian, fair people, so you have people with disability and not people with disability. So they have a right to life, they have a right to association, they have a right to relationship, they have a right to movement, they have a right to education. All the rights, because they are born equal, because they have the same rights. And so what happens is that their voices must be heard. You can't just design a policy without also incorporating the needs, special needs of people with disability in the policy. Like in the country today, you see government running programs, and then they tell you that they are running programs for people with disability, without people with disability being incorporated. We've passed the national bill, the bill for the national protection of people with disability. And rather than having intellectuals and professionals and women scholars running that place, you have people who are government apologists running that same place. Government just brings in. There's a time we had a governor in Edo State, Adams Oshole, and then we had a person with disability as an essay. At the end of the first year, the person with disability, our friend and brother, refunded a lot of money back to government house, and they didn't know what to do with the money. So across the country, you have so many essays that are appointed as by government. Many of them are not disability conscious. They don't even know the issue of human rights for disability. You go to our schools, they are not accessing to see if it's inclusive education that is being run, to look at the quality of teachers that are there, and look at how children with disability are accessing their educational aspirations and what have you. They are open to abuses, violations of their rights. They just remain there in the office and enjoy budgetary allocation, and they have allowed themselves to, and that offices to be used for self-promotion, political acquisition, and the protection of other people's interests and what have you. So the human rights interest is what is important: the rights of life, right to association, and of course, we must recognize that all humans are born equal and their rights must be respected and accommodated in political discourses.
Okay, that's, you're trying to tell me now that if we are to compare and contrast all the models now, which one do we go for?
Human rights and environmental, human rights is the environmental rights. Human rights is the key issue. All over the world, you look at the women talking about gender rights, there's a need for us to have more women in governance, because you can't be talking about men running when we know that a single hand cannot clap itself. It's only when you take both hands that you shake both hands or you clap both hands, you hear the sound of clap. So it's important that we carry the most vulnerable at risk, people with disability, into governance. Their rights must be respected. Look at the case in point in one of the things we took note of in one of our storyline. A 13-year-old girl, Juliet Achinaya, who is blind, was raped by a lesson teacher, in school for the deaf. You go to Kuje, you hear a story, and it was reported at the National Assembly. So government must begin to look at us beyond that charity model, because government keeps telling us that they don't have money, they don't have resources to meet the needs of the 5 million people that just disability. But it's grievous when you hear that the minister, like the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, spent 5.98 billion naira to train 177 youths on smartphone repair in Kano. When you hear that $303.8 million that just came into the country, that they just recovered, and the office of the federal government and the office of the Minister for State for Budget, they've just spent the money on some entrepreneurship program for some youths that are less than 500. When you hear that during the lockdown, COVID lockdown, the minister spent about 13 billion naira on school feeding program, and it's all of because they are not applying the programs of people with disabilities. And then there's a lot of money available for government, because when you hear that the Accountant General of the Federation stole 80 billion naira, and while he was in jail, 97 billion naira was recovered, and then later on government released him. When you hear that former government director of NNPC, they found $8.9 million in an air condition in his house, and they said it was a gift to him. And the money was taken and kept in Central Bank. And later on, they won the case in Central Bank in Supreme Court, and the money was released to him. So there are a lot of monies available that if government begins to cut sizes, begin to reduce their overheads, reduce the number of people that are working as political aides and what have you, and deploy these resources to human resource development, they can meet the special needs of people with disability. If you go to America, you look at the likes of Professor Stephen Hawking. He's a professor. Though we lost him recently, even though he was a quadriplegic, he was on a wheelchair. He was able to teach, got to the level where he became a neurosurgeon and he was teaching all over the world. Look at all over the world, you see the likes of Stephen Wonders. Somebody on the wheelchair ruled America. Theodore Roosevelt was on the wheelchair. He was the president of America, the most of America. But in this part of the world, you just look at people with disability and you feel they should be kept under charity model. It should be kept under the medical model. They should not have access to employment. When they want to employ you, want to put on that form any form of disability. And once he sees a visual impaired or a person with disability, is a means of exclusion, is a means of discrimination, is a means of denial. You don't look at the capacity of the person, you don't look at his brilliance, you don't look at his contribution, you don't look at his history, you don't look at what he has done for himself. You just look at him from the gate, he's going to the bank, he's coming on his wheelchair. The bankers are telling you can't come to the wheelchair, you come to the bank, because if he wants to come and beg, not doing that is one of our major points. So that's why we're talking about human rights. Once you begin to put in place the human rights models, you know that we are born equal, we have a right to life, and we have a right to be respected, our dignities must be enhanced, our welfare must be enhanced and projected. It makes government planning more easy. Government need to know how to prioritize their programs, put their resources in line with what governance meant to be. It's supposed to be a bottom-up approach to development. And then we won't be hearing all these things of people out of school, 5 months, students are out of school, lecturers are not being paid, and yet you can see such money being used to pay bandits and terrorists who say they have become born again overnight, and then you're sending them to Europe, giving them money to startup acts to rehabilitate themselves. Meanwhile, you can't give scholarship to students. Those who have been killed by the bandits and terrorists, their families have not been compensated. So government must begin to learn to be organized, begin to learn to be accountable, begin to learn to be disciplined in the management of our resources. Priorities must be given to the vulnerable at risk people with disability. So much money has been spent, like I said, so much money has been spent on bandits. Now recently we had an attack in Kuje prison. And of course we know that at the end of the day, 7 persons were released by the terrorists from the Abuja Kaduna train attack, and they will need to pay about 800 million naira. And remember, once in the forest, they would have been there for 100 days. I think also pay for like the country will pay 4.6 billion naira to get them out. And ultimately, in the long run, they are going to negotiate with these people, and so there are a lot of monies available. Government must put in place resources to empower people with disabilities. That scholarship entrepreneurship program, things that will help in reducing poverty, because we can't separate poverty from disability. Many poorer people are becoming more disabled every day. So government must begin to organize this program and begin to, of course, change their negative attitude and prejudice and biases against people with disabilities. You're not supposed to, you just keep them there. You have a commission and you have people there, not looking at whether they have the competence and the capacity to drive inclusive programming for people with disability that make up to 5 million of the population. So it's important that government begins to reorganize herself to meet our expectations.
Thank you very much, Mr. Veteran. It's not really easy. And one thing I will also let the general public know, there is nothing about us without us.
Yes.
You just have to carry us along. Human rights. We are also human, and it's also our right. Viewers, we'll just bring on a short break. When we return, we'll continue with the discussion. Stay tuned.
Now streaming, now analyzing, now assessing, now discussing, now sharing your thoughts on everything and every issue that affects you. ACNN is now streaming, discusses the issues trending and the matters that matter to us all. Join us every Monday to Friday at 10 a.m. on ACNN as we go in-depth into every issue that impacts our lives, our communities, and our country.
Welcome back, viewers. If you are just joining us, this is Disability Voice program. And with us in the studio, still Mr. Veteran Emeka. And Mr. Veteran Emeka is a human rights and disability rights advocate. And today we are still dealing on the topic, the models of disability. Before we went on break, we are trying to compare and contrast the models of disability. Mr. Emeka, I still want to ask you further that talking of the models of disability, what can be done to improve the standard of this human rights model, the one we need to focus on as a community, as a government? What do you think will be done to improve the standard?
Yes, that's key. That's very important. Like we're talking about the human rights model, it's important that government begins to recognize the fact that all persons are equal before and under the law. Government must also recognize that any form of discrimination on the basis of disability should be prohibited, and there must be legal protection against every form of discrimination against people with disability. I also believe that the government must ratify the national human rights instruments, to protect the rights of people with disabilities. If you go to National Rights Commission office, you tell you they have a disability officer, they need to be trained, their capacity needs to be built so that they have maybe shelter houses around African persons, you collaborate with disability organizations across the country, funding support, So ultimately in the long run, we're able to reach out to families with children with disability, the special schools, support, If we do it, you are already driving the human rights approach. The issue of access to public buildings, to make public buildings accessible to people with disability. Private sectors must buy into the bill that accommodates employment opportunity for people with disability. And when they fail to do it, the penalty, as outlined in the Act, must be exerted on them, and all the rest of them. Once we follow the laws set up in the Act, we can make human rights work for people with disability. But we also, as human rights activists and disability organizations, must work in partnership. A lot of disability organizations are being set up by government and by people to further even violate the rights of people with disability. A lot of people become first ladies. As soon as their husband become governors, they set up NGOs to say they are championing the rights of people with disability. Meanwhile, it's for self-interest and self, So there's a need for us to begin to accommodate the interest of people with disability, have a common convention that is in line with the United Nations Convention on the Rights of People with Disability, ratify it, and then ensure that once it begins to work, then hold every other person accountable who has violated the rights of people with disability, make them to pay for it.
So going forward, now improving the standard of the model of a human rights model for persons with disability.
Training programs.
Now, what I want to say is this: going forward, who should be held responsible?
Governments, policymakers, people with disability organizations must wake up as voices and champions of people with disability rights. We must go beyond the charity model. We must go beyond the rehabilitation model to knowing that human rights count. The rights of people with disability matters a lot. And that every injury to one person with disability is an injury to all persons with disability. So there's a need for us to have a stakeholder program, stakeholder meeting to begin to enforce it, even in our national education policy, in schools, so that even in schools we have education, we begin to realize that the rights of one is the right of all. In families, religious organizations, traditional rulers must be brought into that thing, that engagement, that interactions to ensure that our rights are protected. Because unfortunately for us, like I said, every day we have more people being added to disability through poverty. Nigeria is the war I told them before. Through road accidents, through unsafe workplaces, through poor betting, every single day, through crisis, the attacks on our roads, on the road, civil disobedience, crisis among communities. So they are added every day. Poor betting, medical facilities are not as effective as before, so people are having issues and they are giving birth to children with disabilities. People have lost their jobs, are taking to alcohol. When women take to alcohol, ultimately they may take drugs like talamadine and give birth to children that are blind. So there are issues that are arising every day. When government begins to also address the issue of poverty and address the issue of insecurity in the country, and then begin to put in place policies that will create job opportunity without discrimination, create education, free education to even people with disability who have been vulnerably abused, subjugated, and denied opportunities. You have pushed us forward, and that's the issue of affirmative action. And I'm sure ultimately in the long run we can have value to governance.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bertrand. But I still want to ask one more question. Talking of the charity model and the human rights model, if you look at the northern part of the country, or even the middle belt, you will find out that the charity model is still very, very much prevailing. And persons with disability are not even making things easy for themselves, because you see them all over the streets, they beg, they beg for alms, and that is the charity model, making people believe that is what they need. What do you have to say about that?
You can't take the place of culture and tradition away from this. That's why we said there's a need for us to even interact and engage religious leaders and traditional rulers into these dimensions. Because when you have families that have been impoverished, you have parents who have children, many of them are working and government is not paying them, even people with 30,000 naira. They can't pay their school fees, they can't pay their house rent, they can't feed the family. Rather than holding government accountable, government is holding those people with disability accountable. You now begin to say, what are they doing on the streets? You want to blame them because they are on the streets trying to see how they can solve, even though we don't encourage that as a means of livelihood. But government has to do everything possible to create an opportunity. In South Africa, there's disability grants, dependency grants. There's even a grant for the aged. There's even a grant for children. In South Africa, in Ghana, they are implementing it. In Uganda, yes, they have it. Grants. I'm not talking about Canada, I'm not talking about Finland, I'm talking about America, I'm not talking about other parts of the world, I'm talking about even in Africa here. So once you begin to create grants for children with disability, women with disability, people with disabilities, support, livelihood support, you have less of them on the streets. You understand? And then use traditional institutions and religious leaders to also begin to encourage them. Because most times you see people who are supposed to be in religious centers, rather than helping matters, they try to want to tell you that the blind man was at the gate, while the others were inside. So they try to want to tell you that we're not meant to be inside, not understanding the spiritual dimension of it. And so by the time they tell you at the gate, those kind of things compel some persons to be on the streets. So government must wake up to responsibility and engage everybody, so that when they begin to see themselves as humans, loved by their family, go to some homes, they have special places, that some children with disability are locked up in rooms, they are denied love, denied care, denied interaction, relationship. So if he has an opportunity of escaping out of the homes, he goes into the street to survive, when he knows that for the past 4 or 5 days he has not been given food by his parents. Because are poor. And so they prioritize. The man that is blind, what use is it to our family? The guy that is on the ground, no wheelchair, what use is it to the family? So why not give food to those that are on their feet running? Those ones can help the family. Why not send the boy child to school? Why send the girl's child? You think we send to school, we get married tomorrow, and that's somebody. So those things. So we must change those prejudices, change those misconceptions. And by the time we do it, we have less of those poor on the street.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bertram. So what last word do you have to give to our viewers? So
I want to say that it's important that we go beyond. In the military regime in 1996, to be precise, for the negotiator enacted Edict number 168 of 1996. It was then governor of Lagos State, and that part or edict prohibited people with disability on the street. That if you see people with disability on the street of Lagos, they should be sent to jail for 3 months. And then during the time of President Obasanjo, Chema Chukwu, August 2000, 2 people with disability, he was the Minister for Aviation and Transport, 2 people with disability from the street of Abuja, and they were locked up because the President of America then, Bill Clinton, was visiting Nigeria. And that culture, even though democracy is over 20 years now, that same culture seems to be driving the processes. If you go to the political parties, they seem to have it. Parents who have children with disability must understand that these are people of which I'm one, who are special gifts to the world. Today, I have families, I have children, I have a job, I have people working for me, I pay salary, I can afford to travel to any part of the world I wish to go to, I can afford to mentor whoever I want to mentor. If my family had killed me when I was young, if they had denied me education when I was young, I won't be bold enough to speak to power. We fought democracy. I was part of the people that fought democracy in this country with Galifem Ifemfala and others, Sagobayawana, Chima Obani and others. We fought. I was in the street with others, fighting for democracy. I was denied, I was abused, I was arrested, a lot of things were done to me. The democracy has enthroned us a level playing field now for us to begin to speak more, so that children with disabilities that are left in homes, denied opportunity to education, will be brought out of their hiding places. Their life matters, their voices matter. We must not stop them from breathing. Let's keep pushing, let's keep voicing, let's keep articulating that human rights is human right. Disability right is human rights, and no one has any right to deny any person with disability from living his life to his fullness. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bertram, and we want to thank you for coming to the program today, and we hope to have you some other time. Thank you for coming.
I do appreciate it.
Viewers, you've had it all. Disability model. The human rights model is very, very key, and it's important. Disability does not mean that we don't have our own rights. Everybody as human beings have their rights equally. So persons with disability should not be denied of their rights. Rights to everything as far as it has to do with living a day-to-day life. Right to education, right to jobs, even rights to transportations.
Medical assistance.
Medically is their right. Government should look into this. Even in the religious settings, they should look into this. It's our right to worship in the church like every other person. And with this, we come to the conclusion of today's episode of Disability Voice. I remain your host, Favor Ajara. We'll see you next week, same time, same station. But for now, bye.